The views and opinions of the guests of Veterans Archives do not reflect the views and opinions of Veterans Archives, its subsidiaries, or its partners. Hello and welcome to Veterans Archives. This is a podcast where you can learn about our military history in the words and voices of the men and women who lived and created it. I'm your host, Bill Krieger, and let's listen to our next story.
We are here today. It is July 12th, 2023. We are with Joe Sauer, or retired First Sergeant Sauer. Cool. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm never feeling better. So today we're gonna talk about where you're from, a little bit about your childhood, your growing up, and like why you joined the military, and some of your experiences, and then we'll finish it up and talk about a little bit what you want people to take away from our conversation.
Okay.
All right. So tell me about where you're from.
Oh, I grew up in Greenville, Michigan. Grew up on a small farm up there. My dad had a couple 100 acres. The farm had been passed down through the generations. My dad had 10 brothers and sisters. He was the third youngest, and all of his older brothers and sisters had kind of went off to college and did their thing and left, and he was the one that decided to stay and stick with the farm. So, I was raised on a farm. I grew up, I'd have to feed cows and do chores at 5 a.m. before school. I think about those times a lot because it taught me hard work and, just that, certain things have to get done, and that's just the way it is. So, grew up on a farm, went to a Catholic school, St. Charles. I remember my parents were dirt ass poor, but they always made sure that I had a Catholic education, which, always stuck with me just for, no other reason than when times get hard, we have that, central connection. But, I went to Greenville High School, graduated in 1994. And I would say that, I had how do I put it? I was like quite a wild kid. Was known for throwing like massive parties out at the farm, things like that. But I remember being, we used to have, my open house for when I graduated from high school was legendary. We had over 600 people there. We went through a cow. We roasted a cow, a pig, a deer, and ran out of food by like 6 o'clock.
You roasted a cow?
Mm-hmm. An entire full cow, yeah.
One of
pig.
Yours?
Mm-hmm.
So you knew the cow before you roasted it?
Of course, yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was a beef farm. Yeah, grew up on a beef farm. And a deer, my dad and his friends would always build things like these big roasters and cook that kind of stuff. So we could throw massive parties. It was a lot of fun, but I had more fun than anybody. I'd say that. But I noticed after high school, my friends were going off to college, and I was just still like, didn't really have a plan. And, this whole partying thing that I spoke about, another one of my friends, his parents had went away for the weekend, which when your parents tell you they're going away for the weekend, they're not. They're coming back. So that's what happened. We all
catch you in the act of throwing a party.
Right.
Yeah.
He came in, his dad came in, and there were kegs of beer and people had thrown up, and there were all kinds of stuff, like just the house was trashed. I mean, it was a mess. And my best friend's dad, just lost his mind on all of us. And he started yelling at us, and he's like, you guys don't do nothing. You sit around, you get drunk, none of you got jobs. You're all going and talking to the recruiter right now. Back up. My best friend's dad was an E7 in the 1073rd Maintenance Company, Jerry Van Sickle. Love him to death. Still think about him all the time.
That name.
Yeah, he's the best. And his grandfather, they've wrote books about his service in World War II. He was the most, one of the survivors of the company, had the most consecutive days engaged in combat. But, so they have quite a family legacy. But his dad, yelling at us and putting his finger in our face and drugged us all up to talk to the recruiter. And I'll never forget it. I'm sitting there like, oh man, like half embarrassed. Like, what am I doing here? And then I got to listening to it, and I was like, man, this is the perfect fit for me. I was the kind of kid, if you'd asked me what I was going to do when I was a kid, I'd have said, I'm I'll be a Marine or something. Just service had kind of appealed to me, but I just hadn't met a recruiter and I hadn't had the right set of circumstances unfold. So as we're sitting there, with Jerry up there with us, and we're all listening to the recruiter.
So who was sitting there with you? Some of them.
Yeah, all right. It was me, Ben Van Sickle, Andy Kinsley, and Sean Freeze. And the four of us all just sitting there listening to the recruiter. And out of nowhere, my buddy Andy, just snaps up and says, "Yeah, this sounds awesome. I want to do this." And I looked at him and I was like, we were all inseparably close, like undescribably close, us four. And I remember thinking, well, I'm not going to let you go without me. And so I was the second one. And I said, yeah, if you do it, I'll do it. And Ben, right there. And then Sean said, yeah, I'm going to wait a minute. Sean didn't end up joining that day. Well, the three of us all just said, yeah, what do you need? Filled out paperwork, did the stuff, scheduled the day at MEPS, went down, took our ASVAB and joined just like that. I mean, within meeting the recruiter on like probably a Friday, we probably enlisted by like Tuesday or Wednesday of the next week. Like it went really fast. Went down there, flew through MEPS. Everything was great. And due to some certain circumstances, Ben, didn't ship when we all went to ship. Like he didn't go to the same place as me and Andy, which kind of sucked because, we all thought the three of us were going together. And we got to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for boot camp. And that was just me and Andy.
So were you able to do like the buddy program?
Yeah, they had said it was a buddy program. But what happened was, I can't even make this up. The line in front of me, Andy was the person in front of me. He was the last person they took for that company, and I was the first person they took for the next company. So he went to like Alpha company, I went to like Bravo company, however it broke out, the separation of basic training. We didn't say anything. And then later on, one of the sergeants came up and they said, hey, you were on this buddy program with your friend. Do you want us to try to get you back together? And I couldn't like Blue Falcon him because he was a week ahead of me. So I just said, no, we'll just keep it that way. So we weren't in the same company. And in fact, that little week separation set us all apart. So we were never together in the same company in AIT either. He was always, actually, no, he was the week behind me. I said that wrong. I must have been the front person in line. He was always the week behind me. And I ended up after graduation, I did wait an extra week there so I could go back with him. But, went through basic and AIT together with my four best friends. And I think about those times, like us being in the National Guard were some of the best times in my life, and being able to have and all those experiences and do those things that you do in the National Guard, those ATs and grailing and all that, to have that with my four best friends in the world, it was just unbelievable. So we did that for, 3, 4, 5 years. And Andy, they came out with these promotion lists called EPS. It just came out. It was a big thing. Andy was number 1 on the EPS list and I was number 2. But he was in college at the time and they got a seat to go to what was called PLDC, then Primary Leadership Developmental Course. It was the E5 course. And he didn't, he couldn't go. So they asked me if I could go. And I did. I went and I passed PLDC and I got promoted to E5 right away. And then when I got promoted to E5, I started looking at it and they had these AGR jobs opening up. And I thought, man,
golden handcuffs.
Yeah. I'm like, I worked in the prison because if you're, a corrections officer, the Department of Corrections will hire up a vet in a second. I mean, with paramilitary training, it's super easy to get into the DOC. And when I got out of college, I was working as a probation officer in Ionia County. And they didn't pay very well, but the state. Where
did you go to college at?
Montcalm Community College.
Okay.
At that time. And then, I got the internship through them and then had transferred in. I remember as Amy Garvey was the probation officer I worked with's name way back then. I can't believe I still remember that. But, then I just left to go work for the prison because, my wife was pregnant and I had to do something. I had to make, some decent money, and corrections officers get paid well. And they do. But I did that for about 3 years and I didn't like it. And in that time when I made E5, there was a guy named Don Dexter who worked with me at the prison as Chief Dexter. He ended up retiring. I don't know if he's retired yet or not, but he's a warrant officer on the tech side. But he looked at me one day and he said, "Hey, you're in the Guard, right?" I said, yeah. He's like, you ever look at those tech or AGR jobs? I'm like, no. He's like, you should look into it. These are some great jobs. He left the prison to go be a tech. Within months, I'd applied to be a recruiter. And they had an opening in Traverse City. And I got called and got offered the job. And me and my wife have always been the kind of people that do like to move and experience different things. So I accepted the job in Traverse City, like right off the get. Within about a week of taking that job, but I hadn't started yet, I was going through the in-processing, we found out that my wife's mom was diagnosed with cancer.
No.
And you talk about a real blessing. When I was in processing, they had fired the recruiter in Greenville, my unit, where I'm from, my hometown. They had fired him and they hadn't replaced it. So when I went to Lansing for in processing, I said, hey, that job in Greenville's open. Can I get that? And I said, we just found out my wife's got cancer. Now's not a great time to move. They made a couple phone calls. The sergeant major walked in at the time, looked at me, and I told him that. They grabbed my orders right in front of me, and I'll never forget it. And they set my orders down on the table and crossed out Traverse City and wrote Greenville. I never worked in Traverse City. I never reported. So that was my in-processing, and I went right to Greenville. The guy from Greenville, to talk about a win-win for me and the Army, because it was wild, some of the things I did in recruiting there. The guy before me the year before had wrote 12 enlistments, and they fired him because he only wrote 12. Back then, you were expected to write, 24. And I wrote 12 enlistments in my first 90 days of being on the job.
That's awesome.
Nobody could figure out nobody knew how I was doing it. People look at me like, they couldn't believe it. I hadn't been to recruiting school. I was just setting the world on fire. And they didn't know. I was just talking to my friends. I knew everybody in that town, everybody in that community, grew up there, lived there my whole life. And I just set the world on fire. In recruiting, I look at some of the statistics, looking back on it, on how people, just wondered how I was able to be so successful, and just knowing that community and working my butt off. But it was a natural fit. And I think that's important because anybody that's in the service, you find there's certain things you're good at and certain things you're not. And looking at you, and when your time in funeral honors and knowing you as long as I have, and your attention to detail is off the charts. I mean, those are the kinds of things that, you always look super sharp. The reason I'm just saying, you tend to find something that you're good at. In the military, I was never really that great at anything like I was at recruiting. And at recruiting, I was an absolute superstar. My first 9 years in recruiting, I finished in the top 5 every single year for production that I was there. I never won the Director's 54, but I finished second or runner up for it multiple times. But that said, it was just, it just came to me. I was just really, really good at it. Flew through the ranks. I made E7 by the time I was 27 because,
that's really,
they just
really young to have E7.
I would average for a period of time, I averaged about 36 to 42 enlistments a year. Which is really, really high. The average mission, again, like I said, was about 24. So again, it was a great fit, right? It was good for the Army. I was writing a lot of contracts for them, and it was great for me because I was home with my family, and I loved it. So I got to spend 10 years of my life supporting the 1073rd Maintenance Company in Greenville, a unit that I grew up with, that I loved, that meant the world to me. And, just supporting, and being there for, all of those people that I knew. It was just phenomenal. When I talked about Jerry Van Sickle, he stayed in as the mess sergeant for, another 10 years just because of us. But like everything in your military career, all good things must come to an end. So I got an E8 slot offered to me, and I had to leave Greenville, and I had to go out and live in the real world now. And I always remember that promotion so much because it changed my life. I went from being able to, go golfing or having a lifestyle to one of leadership where, just the amount of time and investment you have to spend. It's just uncomprehensible to me, that I just didn't have any free time anymore or any life. But that's it. If you want to have a career. So yeah, in 2010, I took a promotion to go down to Fort Custer and supervise the Southwest region area of recruiters, known as the Mustangs. I took over the first year. We were team of the year. The second year, I think we were runner up, had a lot of success down there, and I had a lot of fun. And, after a while I moved. It took me about, I don't know, a year or so to figure, to get things around, to get my family in a situation where we could sell our house and move. But I wanted to be closer, driving from Greenville to Battle Creek's 89 miles one way. It got old.
Back roads too.
Back roads. Yeah, that was the only way to take was the back roads. If you took the expressway, you go way out of your way. So you take the back roads, and it just wears on you driving that far and being away from your family. So we made the commitment to move, and we bought a house in Hastings, Michigan. And Hastings was a cool spot to live because now I can work in Grand Rapids.
Downtown, yeah.
Grand Rapids, Battle Creek, Lansing. I could work all three of those from my house in Hastings. But the real cool thing about, my experience in the military, from probably, from 2010, 2011 on, is that I was able to keep my kids in one high school. So, we could live there and they all graduated from the same high school. That was priceless to us. But, so I moved to Hastings. I literally uproot the entire family, pack up, move. We lived there 7 days in the house we bought. We bought a house on a lake in Hastings. And it was the 7th day that I lived there when I got notified that I was deploying. And that's just classic Army, right? Mm-hmm. Like out of nowhere after you're going to PCS your family and move.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, you're going to Africa. You're going to West Africa. So I deployed on a joint deployment to Liberia, of all places. Dirty, arguably at the time, the poorest country in the world. That was a culture shock. And what an experience, man. I'll tell you, you will never experience freedom like that anywhere, except like a deployment in a foreign country. I was in a very, very remote jungle in Liberia. And I think about all those crazy things that I seen on that deployment and experienced. And when I say total freedom, I mean, it's just the way it was. You got to think in terms of a country that doesn't have power or like running water or the things like, how you're, when it's dark at night in Africa, it's truly dark. Like it is pitch black. You can't see anything but the stars and the moon. Truly beautiful. And just, I just never really seen anything like that or experienced anything like that in my life. The African soldiers there were so loyal to me. It's really hard to describe, but we had like a bond that's, anywhere I went, they almost kept like a circle around me. It was almost like, I felt like I was Keith Richards. When I say I was in a remote jungle, I was. There was only, there was me, another American counterpart, and 2 Marine Corps advisors there as well. So we were post advisors to their entire training command. I was there to help them set up. I was trying to help them set up and establish their first ever NCO professional development courses. So we were setting up like I said earlier, PLDC. Now it was called WLC, Warrior Leadership Course. We were trying to set up an NCO development course, and we spent about the year planning that, getting it together, and we actually ran our first course before I left. But that was it. So there were just no Americans, just us in a very remote jungle. I think about that, in some of the lessons learned in life. I was driving through the jungle one day in a Toyota 4Runner, like pickup. They look different. I'm talking about those like white ones that are real boxy and they got the smokestacks that come up to the top. So that was my truck, and it was, a stick shift, but rough riding But I was driving through a jungle and just to see some things, and my window was up, but I didn't think about how close. This is probably the closest I've ever came to, getting croaked. And I heard this loud whop on my window, and I look, and there's a snake like this with its mouth open, fully open, hitting my window inches from my face.
Wow. To
attack and kill me. It was a black mamba. You ever seen the movie Kill Bill?
I have.
Okay. Black mamba, deadliest snake in the world. There is no cure. There's nothing. I mean, that's it. You get bit by a mamba.
Let's take a quick break.
Veterans Archives is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we rely on donations from our listeners. If you are enjoying these stories and would like to support our continued efforts, please go to www.veteransarchives.org and select the donate button. Thank you.
sucks to be you. You're done.
That's crazy.
So yeah, and there it was, inches away from me. And it just shook the living crap out of me. I was shaking and like, man, if I didn't have that window down, or if I would have had the window down, but again, you just got to be smart. You don't know where you're at. Keep the window up,
Yeah, I would
But
too.
some other, I got a lot of Mamba stories over there. I walked up on one of my African soldiers one day. I was like, what are you doing? He said, I'm fighting a snake. And he was hitting it with a stick. I'm like, that's a Mamba. Like, but they don't care. To them, it's food. So like, I told him to get away from it. And he's like, no, that's dinner. Okay. He did. He killed the snake. They know how to kill them. They're not afraid of them like we are.
Mamba.
Yeah. Oh yeah. While I was over there, I ate Mamba, cobra, anaconda. Go through the jungles on a run over there and you see these giant anaconda trails, kind of blows your mind. Like, whoa, what did I get myself into? What am I doing here?
How big are those?
The
reality?
one that I saw was 12 foot and they called it a baby. They said it was a baby. But as soon as I called the trail, I told my soldiers, they found out where it lived, hunted it down and killed it for food. Like, seriously, that's a big deal. Any kind of meat over there. I mean, again, the poorest country in the world, right?
Like how thick is it? Like that thick?
Yeah, about like that. I'd say, 10 inches or so. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they're huge. But and like I said, they said that was a baby. Some of them grow, they grow to be quite big, I guess. I don't know. To me, yeah. But yeah, a lot of snake encounters over there. I ran over a green mamba once in that truck. I wished I would have had a belt made out of that, because a green mamba is this really crazy, bright neon green. But so I was Fort Custer working down there for 7 days out of nowhere, get pulled, sent, deployed 393 days overseas in Liberia. And then I came back. And when I came back, my team had changed a lot. There's a lot of leadership changes. Like, things had changed. It was tough to, adjust on the fly and come back and get back into the swing of recruiting. From there, I want to say I left there to become the state retention NCO around 2014. I went to become the state retention NCO, and man, that was a cool gig. Made a lot of changes and a lot of differences. I had a thing that I came up with where I found these high quality, what kind of knives are those? Did you ever get one of those Benchmades? Did you ever get one of my retention Benchmades? You know what I'm talking about?
I can't remember if I did or didn't.
You remember those recruiting challenges I did when I was the first sergeant, like the sunglasses and stuff like that? Yeah, I still have them. You know how my challenges were always like really cool items? When I was in retention, I came up with Benchmade like knives, like real, and then it's hard because you can't spend more than $75 on an item in the military. So I had to get creative about how I purchased them. But, we did those stupid knives, and they ended up bought them in bulk, and they ended up being like $130 a piece. But what I did is I created a roster, like for every single person in the state of Michigan that was in their ETS window. And I made sure that every person that was on that roster got issued a knife. So I never gave those stupid knives out to the chain of command. I never gave them to, I didn't want them ending up to, to all their friends and their buddies. Yeah. I wanted them to go to what they were intended for. And because we did it like that, and the state retention team, we narrowed it down. We were really able to have some amazing numbers. That was the most significant thing I did. We really did. We were averaging, a 10% attrition loss rate. That's really, really good. We had gotten to the point to where we were national leaders in most of the retention categories. So I was, pretty good at that. So, led to me getting an opportunity as a first sergeant, and that's when I worked for you,
or worked with me.
I worked
for you.
Oh,
is the other way around.
I worked for you. That's the way I always looked at it. But and it's kind of neat, now I work for this agency. I work for the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency, and that was when Jason Rogers was the company commander. Now, I have history with this guy. Me and him went to BNOC, which is your E6 school, way back in 2007 and 2008 together. We didn't know each other. We met each other at that school, and we just ended up being best buds at this school. And I just found that he's the kind of guy that always brought out the best in me. I always saw the best parts of myself. I always wanted to smile. I always wanted to be happy working with him. So when I found out he was the commander and I had the chance to be his first sergeant, it was incredible. And, still to this day, we had that year that we all had together was the best. We finished that year 106% of mission, and that's the best a company's ever achieved in the last 20 years.
I think I was 118%.
Yeah.
And I remember going to OU, and I'm sure you're going to remember this. We went to OU for a career fair. It was me and you, Jason Rogers, and Eric Albright.
Okay.
And me and you would sit out front, and we got like 43 leads. And I think 5 or 6 of those eventually, not like right away, but enlisted. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's impressive.
I remember doing that with you. That was one of the best events that I went to in my recruiting experience.
That was some of the most fun. We did have a lot of fun on those trips, and getting out and seeing things. Our company stretched from Port Huron to Holland, so it was like all the central middle part of the state. So it was kind of weird, how we were structured, but we would have to usually go TDY when we would come down and stay with you guys. But you remember those trivia nights and like
seeing Red Wings.
Yeah, Dino Cicerelli. Yeah, those were great, man. Those times were priceless. That was still to this day, that was my favorite assignment. The most fun I've ever had. Things changed.
Fun year.
Yeah, things changed, and I came out high on the EPS list for E9. So, I left, I went back, gave up the diamond because I didn't need any more diamond time, and went back, and enrolled in the Sergeant Major's Academy. And, I think about that a lot as I go on in my career. And I was telling this story to someone else earlier today, and I'm just going to tell it. And my battalion had counted on me, taking that slot. And I was getting close to retirement. But if I took that promotion, I had to owe the Army 3 more years. And I was looking at where I was getting in my life. And I was like, man, I'm getting a little bit older. I'm getting to a point to where I'd always promised myself I was going to retire young so that I could do a second career or make the most of it. And every day that I'm spending in uniform is like a day I'm taking away from that. So I kind of hedged my bets, and I had a job that I really wanted, which is the job that I have now, that was coming up, but I wasn't selected. I had to take a chance to apply for that. And I didn't really necessarily want to retire just for the chance at applying for a job. So I had another job to cover, like another really, really good job, to make sure that I was covered no matter what. I was going to be there, be able to take care of my family no matter what happens when I retire. And, so I made the decision to retire. So I go in, wasting time here, but go in and I go and tell my battalion commander, and we shut the door and we have this one-on-one.
Who is the battalion commander?
Garn, Lieutenant Colonel
Garn.
Alex Garn. He's a friend of mine. He's somebody that he's very demanding, but he's personally behind closed doors. Me and him are actually pretty tight, and we're pretty good friends. So I was kind of shocked that he was so mad and so angry. Like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you retiring? We're counting on you. Like, and he hit me with all these really hard, weird feelings about this retirement. And I just leveled with him. And I said, I laid out all my reasons, my pros and my cons for why I retired. And, hey, this is not, really where I saw myself. If I take this promotion, I owe you 3 more years. That 3 more years is 3 years that, you know what I mean? I look at that, I'd be coming up on the end of that right now. I would just now being able to retire. And I'm so much further now from, my real goals. It was the right move for me. No regrets whatsoever. I'd do it again. The only regret I have is I wish I'd have retired sooner, actually. But Alex retired, and then he called me about 3 months after he retired, and he literally said out of nowhere in the coolest conversation, and he said, I just kind of listened to you, and I listened to all of the points that you made, and I got what you were saying, and you're right, Joe. It was the right decision, And I thought that was kind of cool. Like, meaning, like, when we join, right? Like, you put your country first and your family first, but at some point, you really need to make those things happen. And since I've retired, I just kind of feel like I've been a great husband and a great dad. I'm always home, and one of my last assignments supervising the RSP, I counted I'd worked 7 out of my last 9 weekends, and it was just wearing on me, and it was just tough. So like that military lifestyle, it's hard, and I heard
you can't say no to something. You have to go and do it.
Yeah. I had a sergeant major today at that event we were just at today that said, he was talking about his 4th marriage. And I thought, like, wow, how lucky am I to have, a wife that would stick with me through it. But the fact that I was able to do it. So again, I look back on, I think a lot about my military service, and no regrets. I would absolutely do it again. I do everything the same way pretty much, because it was such a great experience. I met the best people in the world, but the fact that you qualify for 20 years and get a retirement, like, to move on and do something else, just absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But,
So was there anybody that you think that was like impactful during your military experience?
Oh, you name it. So many great mentors, so many great leaders. I spoke about Jason Rogers earlier, and that's a big part of the reason he was retiring, and he got a job at the same agency. He works here at the NVAA. Just to be able to work with him every day, that was important to me. But yeah, man, I've never seen leadership and mentorship like I had in the Army, and some of those friends. It's ironic that still to this very day, I still keep in touch with my recruiter. Was a guy named John Ellert. He was from Ionia, and he was, an old AGR guy, just a super, super tight friend. And I look at some of the things like, did you know Amanda Durst?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I was her recruiter and, her sister's recruiter. And just looking at her coming up, and then her enlisting my daughter's best friend. My daughter's best friend, coming out, and she's like, "Hey, I need a good recruiter." And the first person I called was Amanda, because I wanted her, but looking at like that and those types of impacts, and just knowing people that, having relationships and bonds, and knowing that they're going to, do their best to take care of people. And, it's funny. And then my other daughter ended up enlisting. You know what? This is one thing I definitely want to say. My proudest moment in the uniform is the last day I ever wore a uniform. I got to go down to Fort Benning and pin 2nd generation jump wings on my daughter. That was cool.
Yeah.
That was
really cool.
My retirement date was
super proud moment.
Yeah, September 1st or August 31st, and she graduated from jump school like August 29th. So I was still on active duty in uniform and pinned her jump wings. That was pretty cool. That's probably the only regret, honestly. The only thing that I would say, I wished I could have stayed in just to be a part of my daughter who's still in's life, But then again, she's got to do it on her own. She doesn't want, to say that, she doesn't want to use nepotism or, try to get favors or, you know what I mean? Nobody wants that. She wants to make her own way and do her own thing. So she's at the Marshall Street Armory now, and it's not condemned yet. But, yeah, man, my daughter's kicking ass. I want to brag about her. She's in her 3rd year of MSU. She's trying to get into law school. She's trying to get a free ride or a full ride through law school. And I wouldn't be surprised if she finds a way to pull it off. She's in Spain right now for learn from abroad.
Study
class.
abroad.
Yeah, and MSU, if she gets caught speaking English over there in one of the classes, they'll fail her and send her home. And you know what I said?
Wow.
Good.
Gotta be hard on her, right?
Yeah, she's been in Spain since May, and she comes back August 1st. So we're getting close. It'd be nice to get her back home.
So has she thought about doing ROTC or anything?
Yeah, no, I don't think she wants a commitment. She just wants the educational benefits, and I mean, rightfully so, right? As a dad, I've never given her any money. She's never taken out a student loan. The Guard's phenomenal,
Yeah, it is great.
Especially for Michigan State, because it's so damn expensive.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, just a great choice for us. So I don't think I don't think she wants the commitment. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if she gets out after her 6 years, her time's up. I think she's just, trying to use what she can to get through law school. And then,
because if you do, there is Detroit College of Law.
Yeah.
And then Wayne State is probably the best one as far as
U of M and Wayne State are the best two in Michigan.
Does SSTAT pay for?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Mingstap does. Yep.
Mingstap
Yep.
does.
She already looked into it. So, yeah. Up to, it's still the same. You can only claim like whatever it is, $14,000 a year. But yeah, it counts towards law school. So it would help. But if she gets a full ride,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Knowing people will help too.
yeah. But no, I don't see her with any, desire to go to OCS or to do anything above and beyond. I mean, maybe. Well, I take that back. She's a paralegal, and she just loves. She'd probably be a JAG attorney, but she might be a JAG attorney for the Guard if she can get it full time and here in Lansing. Then she might stay in. Otherwise, I just don't see it being a fit for her. Not with what her plans are. But hey.
We'll see when they change their mind 100 times.
Yeah.
At least I know I did at that age.
Yeah. Man, I've talked a lot.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the MVAA, or Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency, and kind of tell me a little bit about what you do here and how you help vets and the impact you can make.
Yeah, very cool. All right, so the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency is the central coordinating agency for veterans in the state of Michigan. Whenever you have a question, like, hey, I lost my DD-214, we can print them off for you on the spot. We're the central coordinating agency, which means we make connections. So where do I go for this? How do I file a VA disability claim? What do I do? Where do I go? We, set you in the right direction. What I do is I'm the employment analyst. It kind of makes sense. You'll get it, coming from recruiting. It's all about workforce development. And that's what I do now. I help connect employers to great talent. So I work with organizations. I don't work with veterans every day. I work with businesses all day, every day to incorporate veteran-friendly hiring practices. Help them set up things like SkillBridge, registered apprenticeship programs so that veterans can use their GI bills, things like that. So I work with some of the greatest companies in the world, Ford, Meyer, Consumers Energy, you name it. I mean, some Rocket, I can go on and on and on. Spartan Nash, Steelcase, Hayworth, some of the biggest employers around, and, get to help them set up the policies and programs that take care of soldiers. Here's a good example of one I just did, worked with Spartan Nash on yesterday. They wanted to know how to apply for our gold level status. And they have to meet, they don't allow continuing health care for deployed service members. Did you ever deploy?
Yep, to Cuba.
Okay. You know how when you deploy, if you have a civilian job and you use them for your medical insurance, and now you have to go on TRICARE, it requires all new doctors, right? It really sucks when you deploy. So we work with businesses to help them, just institute policies that offer their employees to keep their same insurance, things like that, so you don't put that hardship on the family. Yeah. We work with organizations to do things like differential pay, because a lot of people make more in their civilian job than they make in the Guard. It's just the way it is. So we work with organizations to help offset that pay, for the financial burden on your family while you're deployed. If you're making more at your job, there's a good chance, if you're an E4 and you work at Ford, where you make more money at.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, having that, setting up those kinds of veteran friendly policies. And then I help, I work with organizations to help write job postings to be more friendly, things of that nature. But we have a program called our Veteran Friendly Employer Program, and I certify it bronze, silver, and gold, just like the Olympics. To put it into perspective, I got 589 bronze today. And 25 gold. Think about that. It's hard to achieve that gold status. So that's the point. Like as you come in, it's very easy to come in at bronze, but as you start to change your policies and the things that you're doing for veterans out there, then you can elevate your status. And then we, we give you the logo, and then we allow you to market yourself, use our logo on your website. We market your organization through NVAA. So, but yeah, that's it. I mean, I'm working with employers all day.
And you're helping make an impact for those veterans in the state of Michigan.
Yeah. Just trying to make, more opportunities, better veteran-friendly employment. But you think about it, one of the best veteran programs, hiring programs out there is the Consumers Energy, the Powerline Boot Camp and the Gas Boot Camp. And you talk to consumers and you're like, why do you invest?
It's a union.
Yeah. But, you think about it, they need physically fit dudes. They need men and women that can climb poles. You climb up a utility pole. That's no joke. So, and it's not easy to find a demographic of society that has a level of physical fitness, it's like standards. And if you're in the Guard or reserves, you're going to meet standards, and that's it. So that's very attractive to these employers. Like, hey, we know we can get physically fit people that can do the job. So they want to specifically market to that. And that's how those programs were created. But, and you think about it from the employer's perspective, weed's legal in Michigan, right? I mean, I hear people gripe about drug tests 2-3 times a week. It's a real problem.
Yeah.
But if you hire from, Guard, reservists, or recently transitioned service members, in the military, you're not smoking weed in the military. You're just not, So like understanding those, what we have to offer, and that, that veterans are, getting organizations to understand that veterans are leaders who can make decisions, who are ultra focused, but also understanding that they come with their own sets of issues, right? PTSD, VA issues, things like that. And what does an employer do when they experience that? Where do you go for help? You come to us. So you come, when I say the NBAA,
so full circle.
Full circle, exactly. Yeah. The answer is always yes, and we're here. But again, when we do these things, when we implement these processes, it just boosts companies' retention because it's doing the right thing. They're taking care of their vets. So it's pretty worthwhile. So as I sit here and talk about it, now you know why I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah.
Why I love this job so much. So,
awesome. Yeah. Well, is there anything that you would like to add to what we talked about?
Yeah. Out of the 4 of us that all enlisted that day one, it's funny. All 4 of us at some point were AGR. All went AGR. I was the first one to go. Told everybody else about the AGR program, like, hey, you got to get on board, and thinking about that. And I come through full circle, and I look at, and you wonder how your life's going to turn out when you're in high school with your 4 best friends. Andy, the one sitting next to us, was struck by a roadside bomb in Iraq, and suffered from a TBI. Massive TBI, and he was never right. He was never the same from that, and just seeing like him, and he ended up, he was a police officer. That's what he did in the civilian world, or that was his job before he went AGR. And then he always stayed as a part-time police officer, but he was the one who was the best looking. He was the brightest of all of us. Like, he had the world. I mean, he was the smartest one. Like, he scored a 90 something on his ASVAB, super good looking. And, and then that, happened. And, I always felt like, I don't know. It's a hard thing to say, 'cause I don't know, but, he started, he got into drugs. He started self-medicating after the IED, after he came back, and he died from an overdose. And,
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. And you think about that and how, one little thing can change everything. I always say, the TBI, he wasn't the same. He was so smart. I just always kind of felt like he couldn't understand what was wrong with him. He could never figure out why, and that's why I felt like he got into drugs, just because he never, he could never come to terms with what it was, why he wasn't the same after that explosion. It just never, and I'm not saying that it was a suicide. It was not. It was an overdose, but he knew what he was doing too. And I think he just started self-medicating because he couldn't understand why he felt the way that he did, and just a personal thing. And I think about that a lot because, he was my best friend in the world. And, and then Ben, my other best friend in the world, he had a heart attack in the middle of a PT test. True story.
Wow.
In the middle of the 2-mile run. Talk about falling out. Yeah, ambulance, full-blown grabber. So anyways, that ended up leading to he was a training NCO. He was an E6 training NCO up at Greenville at the 1073rd. And after that heart attack led to a series of downhill events, he just medically, he couldn't, you know what I mean? He couldn't recover from it. He couldn't serve. So yeah, he was medical discharge. And then Sean, the other one, Sean ended up joining. I said he didn't join the same day as us. That's true. He waited about 1.5 years, and then he ended up joining later. But that was very, very cool to have him. He actually is the only one who went AGR into recruiting with me. And, he just retired. Yesterday was his last day that he had to do anything on duty. So I'm just thinking about those 4 guys right now. I served with Sean for 15 years, working side by side together every day, with somebody who's, his mom and my mom were best friends growing up. You know what I mean? That's how deep our roots go. And, just looking at like, wow, what it all, and, looking at it. And when I said, would I do it again? Yeah, absolutely. I do it all again every day. But just thinking about that and those impacts and how it all played out and where we all ended up, but again, it was just that having the opportunity to go through that together. They actually wrote newspaper articles about us. I think it was titled From Kindergarten to the National Guard. So,
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, about us all. But yeah, I don't know. I just felt like saying that, I guess. It'd be hard not to talk about them.
Yeah. So, is there anything that you would, if anybody's listening to this conversation, is there anything additional that you would like them to take away from it?
Yeah, if you're a veteran and you're listening to this, it's just important that you're not alone, and it's hard to find people to talk to. It's hard to find people to relate and find those experiences, but they're out there, So, find somebody, talk about it, and then, include it in your life in the right kind of level of where you need it. But the best thing that I would say about my military service that stuck with me is just, you can't really make anything ever about you. It's never about you. It's always about what you're trying to do. Never the destination, always the journey.
Just like you said, you worked for me and you were my supervisor. Yeah.
But, keep pouring into everybody else. And that's the only way you really get, you feel that real sense of, it's totally worth it for me.
Okay. Well, it was an awesome interview today. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
And that'll be it.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you talking with me.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Veterans Archives, the podcast that brings you the story of the men and women who have created and lived our military history. If you or someone you know served in the military and would like to share your story with Veterans Archives, please go to www.veteransarchives.org, select the Apply Now button, and fill out our application, and someone will get right back with you. Veterans Archives is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we rely on the donations of our listeners. If you are enjoying these stories and you support our efforts, please go to www.veteransarchives.org and select the Donate button. Any donation is certainly appreciated. Look for Veterans Archives on your favorite social media. We are on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Just look for Veterans Archives. Like, follow, and share our page. We'd certainly appreciate it. If you or someone you know is a veteran and you are struggling with mental health issues, please dial 988 and select option 1 for the Veterans Crisis Hotline. Please be sure to tune in next time for the next episode of Veterans Archives.